one more time!
Okay, one more, just one more. That is until they release the new one, and the inevitable sequel to that, and the third game, which is a prequel, and the fourth one that has a disappointing story and a stupid ending. So the last one was less than stellar, but I could see why some people like it, and there are excuses that can be made for it. This one, however, well,
Felicia, this is the number I gave Whitney Chang. How'd you get it?
It's still better than Spider-Man 3, though that's not exactly an achievement. Let me go ahead and say, no, I don't like this game if I haven't made that clear enough already. But that doesn't mean people who do like it are wrong. You have every right to disagree with me and think this game is a masterpiece. My opinion isn't law. Sheesh, some of you guys are so defensive. To me, this is where it felt like Beanox was making this game out of obligation and not passion. The budget was considerably lower, and it was very clearly pushed out onto store shelves as fast as they could. One of the first things that sticks out is that in terms of animation, voice acting, and design, this doesn't feel at all like a standard AAA game, but instead a very high-budget indie game. It makes sense that this game would feel rushed and desperate to bank on the hype of the movie, which dissipated pretty quickly after we all actually saw it. 2014 was a bad year for Spider-Man all around. The new movie series was tanking. In one comic, he was possessed by Doc Ock, and in the other, he was fucking dead. The cartoon that will forever live in the shadow of its predecessor was rotting children's minds, and Activision clearly stopped caring about producing this series because they found a new guaranteed moneymaker to milk for sequels. It was worse than in the 90s where he was blonde and also a clone, but not actually a clone. This game is a product of the darkest time for the character, and it shows. So with that bleak opening remarks, let's dive in. Ah shit, I accidentally stole another Red Letter Media joke. I love that the title screen has a 50,000 word legal document on it. Oh hey, it's Andrew Garfield. Who is that? Alright, they couldn't afford his face, so they went with the next best thing. Model the most generic looking human being on the face of the earth, and have that one guy voice him. This was apparently enough of a milestone that they marketed this on the box. Play as Peter Parker while you converse with Kingpin, Kraven, and others.
Holy fuck! Somebody call CNN!
Really? That's what you lead with? Have conversations with people. Oh boy, I bet this will have some Mass Effect quality dialogue, am I right?
And what are you finding out?
That's criminals.
We've played as Peter Parker before, tons of times. It was definitely more interesting there. Fucking, I hate this guy. I hate his face. I hate your face.
Join the club.
His head is too small. This character model sucks.
What is wrong with you?
All they needed to do was swap heads with the vigilante suit and the proportions would be fine. Think smarter, not harder, kids. Well, after being a dick to Hurley from Lost, Peter thinks, wow, the sound of gunfire when I, a 15-year-old, am alone on the streets at night in a dangerous city.
Hey! Check that out.
Better go investigate that right away. Then Uncle Ben dies in an awkwardly animated cutscene and we get some exposition on Spider-Man. As if we didn't know who that was already. What an opening! The overall story of this game is kind of a jumbled mess of the movie it was based on, plus some completely unrelated storyline that they seem far more interested in telling. I get the feeling that, like with the last game, Beanox really wanted to have an original story for this game that explores gaps the movies left unfilled. But someone forced them to half-ass it into an adaptation of what is runner-up for the worst Spider-Man movie. The story is actually a little better than the last one because it doesn't jump a million robotic sharks. Instead, it just tries to explore themes of morals, like if it's right for Daredevil to kill in the name of justice. Spider-Man. Oh, I'm so sorry, I got this confused with something else for a second. The story here feels a lot like they had a better general idea to run with than last time, but it's executed awkwardly and the script feels a few drafts away from being genuinely pretty good. All that was needed was a rewrite to change some characters around and definitely cut some of them out, because after a while it stops feeling coherent and becomes overstuffed with plot lines that all ultimately have a very bland and uninteresting conclusion. So, remember in the movie where Spider-Man just gave up looking for Uncle Ben's killer and the plot was never resolved? Well, I applaud this story for trying to figure out a solution to that mess. He goes after him anyway, and just short of catching the guy and ripping him a new organic web shooter hole, he's killed off by someone the media has named the Carnage Killer. Well, at least we know what happened to him. I still think the conclusion was better when it was revealed he was looking for a bootlegger's secret treasure hidden in Aunt May's house, and he teamed up with Mysterio to fake her death at an old folks' home. Man, comics are stupid. Why do I read this shit? So Spider-Man goes on a quest to stop an out-of-control gang war between rival mobs, and also get a chance to talk with the serial killer who's been butchering criminals. He's been thinking about going in the murdering business himself as of late and could use some advice. Now the biggest problem is that they take Cletus Cassidy, the guy who may as well be Charles Manson with superpowers, and they try to make him a violent anti-hero like the Punisher, or more aptly, Dexter.
Some New Yorkers we spoke to applaud the fact that violent criminals are being taken off the streets.
Hey, somebody wants to clean up the trash. I say more power to them.
Holy shit, they just made him Dexter. Nice V-neck, buddy. That's real threatening. I take issue with this because this is a character who is known for being a sadistic psychopath who throws small children out of 10-story windows for fun. Now the game tries to write him into being a candidate for the story's moral compass? That's a really strange direction to take with it. No, Cletus Cassidy is not a misunderstood hero, and the Joker isn't the protagonist of The Dark Knight. I will not argue morals with this person. Stop it. And then Kraven is introduced into the plot too with pretty much the same twist. Instead of only hunting animals, Kraven is also some kind of lethal vigilante in his spare time. Like, he does it on the weekends, I guess. He comes up with this super elaborate plan to train Spider-Man to be a better vigilante, and then kill him. You made him better at his job so you could kill him. How dense can you be? No wonder you lost, idiot! The unforgivable things about the scenes with Kraven are that they are actually really interesting. This is a great representation of Kraven the Hunter, and it's actually kind of cool to just look around his house and talk about his take on life and the law.
True hunters wish to conserve the natural world. It is where we find peace.
I almost wish they hadn't pulled this stupid twist where he backstabs Spider-Man. It would have improved the story if Peter screwed up and let something bad happen. Then Kraven blamed him for letting an innocent get hurt and decided to go after him for his recklessness. Anything is better than, oh by the way, I'm gonna kill you now in the park for no reason. Oh hey, is this a crime scene? Can I see? Am I disturbing you guys? The rest of the story outside Kraven and Cassidy is far less interesting, and it's also pretty unimportant, as it feels like everything else is shoehorned in to pad out the length of the game. It reminds me a lot of earlier Spider-Man games where side stories with villains that don't have any effect on the main plot will crop up and serve as boss battles, though I feel like we've gotten to the point that this is a step down from the writing we know these games are capable of having. There's plenty of scenes devoted to trying to use Kingpin as an antagonist, and they also rip off dialogue from the Ultimate Comics during his boss fight.
You are so fat. When you cut yourself shaving, marshmallow fluff comes out. You're so fat your high school yearbook photo was taken from a helicopter.
Jobs and live their small lives and get a cookie at the end of the day.
I am all for using source material, but the delivery of these lines is so distractingly bad that it kills all tension.
You're so fat I could have you arrested for 10 pounds of crack. By which I mean butt crack. Zing! Just to be clear.
Honestly, Vincent D'Onofrio ruined Kingpin for me. He did this by being the best Kingpin. And all other renditions of the character, even in the source material sometimes, feel cartoonish and flat by comparison. So now this bloated 9-foot-tall supervillain with a silly voice is made even more insufferable. Kingpin serves as pretty much the only line connecting all these totally unrelated plots, and it's weird when the game suddenly forgets about him, considering they made him the center of attention until about the 80% mark. Then we get...
Oh God, Harry Osborn, is that really you?
Does it look like me? No. Harry Osborn's dead thanks to you. All that's left is the Goblin.
Oh. Well, at least you tried. And then, of course, Green Goblin and Electro are shoved in as side characters that you don't even really care about. Or do they fit in with the overall themes of this story? They're just there for the sake of staying synced with the movie plot. But Gwen isn't for some reason? It's odd that she was omitted from the story, considering how she was so central to the last game and even more so to the plot of the second movie. Whatever, who cares about consistency?
Well, what's the point of saving the world if Gwen Stacy's not in it?
Hello, darkness, my old friend.
Team killer! Triple kill! Holy shit!
Speaking of consistency, the gameplay is very similar to the last one. With some tweaks, of course. Some work and some don't, but overall I think I'd say this one plays a little better. The swinging is far from perfect, but it's the best it has been since, say, Web of Shadows, though it definitely doesn't surpass that game. It's unique in the fact that the left and right triggers shoot a web line from each corresponding hand on Sergeant William James over here, and it feels way better than the last game. You swing at a much slower pace, and the webs are back to attaching relatively close to physical objects again. So now Spider-Man feels like he has more weight applied to him. The last game was about making the swinging look cool, but this one tried making it feel cool. And even though you really don't have much momentum, and you could probably get everywhere faster with the web rush, this swinging does its job without being annoying or broken. That's all I want. I don't want it to be annoying or broken. I just wish it was designed so you had to remember to send out a web line from the correct side to catch yourself, because even if there isn't a building near him, he swings just fine. And even still, there isn't much of a danger because there isn't any fall damage. I personally think it would be much more exciting if splattering on the concrete was a concern. Quick, Insomniac, grab a pen and paper, this is important. Fall damage adds tension and incentive to get better at swinging. Put that in there. Okay? You got it? Alright, great. The speed and physics for the swinging are fairly realistic and it's honestly fun to use, but it's not very memorable and it certainly could have been better. In the future, let's spice it up and go back to the days of Spider-Man being a bombastic human pendulum that loops around lampposts and kicks people. It's more fun that way. A good swinging mechanic should be more rewarding to the player than this. It should have more of a learning curve and give the player more room to discover and evolve. You start out using it as a means to get from point A to B, but at the end of the game, you should be using it to do all kinds of amazing tricks that you learned because your friend from work told you about it and the game didn't have to hold your hand. In fact, if the swinging is designed well, all these cool animations you do with Web Rush mode, you should be able to know how to do these manually. It's so much more engaging than just tapping one button and watching him go. Insomniac, hey, we're still doing the notes thing. Please, remember this. Hey, check this out. I call it the inverted teabag. The fighting mechanics are pretty much the same as the last game, even keeping the environmental objects that equal an instant win if you use them. You'll want to grab that upgrade as fast as possible. Although these environmental takedowns aren't nearly as common, I sometimes feel like they forgot to add some to certain fight locations. The best way to do the combat efficiently is to focus on one guy at a time and just counter everyone else while you keep going after that enemy. Then move on to the next one. I once got a really angry comment about how Spider-Man 3 and this game both have great combat and aren't designed for casuals. And boy was that person right. You know what? Let's load up the challenge arena and test how intuitive this design is. Alright, you ready folks? The objective is to survive all the waves of enemies without getting hit more than 5 times. Sounds pretty tough, right? Alright, let's give it a shot. It's real difficult! It isn't challenging, and after a while it isn't even very exciting. Upon looking at this combat style again, I think there needs to be a middle ground with Spider-Man's fighting ability. Not too cartoonish, but not too realistic either, because they both get pretty boring after too long. I think the perfect Spider-Man fight mechanic should be like a cross between Ultimate's visceral and acrobatic melee moveset, Spider-Man 2's Spider Sense dodge, and Web of Shadows web strikes. The punches feel powerful and painful, you can dodge an enemy's attacks and fluid motions, and you can take the fight to the skies and combine movement with the attacks. Insomniac, seriously, there's gonna be a quiz on this later. For the love of God, write this down. I'd say the most fun I had was during the stealth segments. They were just the right level of challenge and added extra reason not to get seen because it puts you one step closer to losing the objective. You gotta really take your time and watch the enemy patterns. I guess I like it because it requires a little more forward thinking than the rest of the combat, and it's satisfying to make it through a section without getting spotted. Although on multiple occasions I found a bug where everyone in the map is aware of you at all times right at the beginning of the level, and you can't hide, so it fails you automatically. Fuck, I love when the game punishes you for its flaws. It's the best! Wait, that's the sound barrier thing from Web of Shadows, except it hurts me now. So this is what it's like. I'm the symbiotes now. Huh. Well, I guess I learned a lot today about interspecies segregation. Those aliens didn't want to take over our society and use our bodies as meat puppets. They just wanted a home. I also learned you can climb your web, and I feel like a huge idiot for not knowing this until a flood of comments told me about it. I guess it's a nice addition to have a health bar again. I don't know why they would have taken that out considering it's so useful. In the last game, getting hit either felt inconsequential or devastating because you had no gauge of the amount of damage other than the screen turning all hazy and red. At which point, you just felt like you were about to die, so you just swing off and wait until it went back to normal. It totally killed the flow of combat. Now in this one, when your health gets low, you can swing away and manually heal yourself, and it totally kills the flow of combat. And during boss fights, it's fucking impossible to find time to do it. Ah! 1 step forward, 2 steps back. Come on, guys!
What are all you tough guys so afraid of?
The Carnage Killer! He's murdering my people, huh? The Russians? Hammerhead's crew? Mr. Negative's men? Everyone thinks the other guys are paying him. I'm starting to worry he's some kind of freak. Like that giant lizard a while back, or that dude with all the robots.
So, as long as he's out there killing, the gang war goes on?
And it gets worse!
I just feel like they barely learned anything from the lukewarm response to the last game. I was really hoping they'd improve the boss fights, but those are just as underwhelming too. Though they're thankfully with actual characters again instead of lame-ass robots. Let's take the fight with Shocker, for example. That's a really cool rendition of his costume, and he looks badass. But the fight is so formulaic, and it feels like it's just there to burn up time. You zip over to him, wail on him for a second, he does an area of effect move, you jump out of the way, then you zip over and start hitting him again. There's no strategy, and it feels like he can't do anything to pose a genuine threat. All the bosses are like this. Use these stupid shock gauntlets on Kingpin, run over, smack him around, dodge back, rinse, repeat. Punch Craven, then use the web strike on him, then punch him, then web strike. They're all about repeating a very simple pattern. I mean, he comes out of absolutely nowhere in the story, but at least the boss with Electro looks really cool. It's nice to finally have one of these take place in the open world map. Plus, this one is actually kind of challenging. You know what? This one's okay. Electro doesn't look too great, and this is the most generic looking rooftop I've ever fought someone on. But Electro is hard to make into a boring boss fight. The boss with Harry is weird because it's like a combination of the fight from the PS2 version of Spider-Man 3 and the Goblin boss from Friend or Foe. Of all the sources of inspiration to take from the previous games, those were not the ones to use.